Hi, everybody. This is the Patriot Hut, the amazing, spectacular, terrific, the great one, the people's champion. Your host, the Hut, and welcome back to the Patriot Hut. And hopefully, you like this very long live stream. And this is a very critical information here because we get into again with Gerald Ford. The last time I spoke to you, I believe it was about Jerry Ford, Gerald Ford, and what he did to tamper with the information of the JFK report that the Warren Commission had done in 1964. And this is extra, sort of a little bit extra for you because this digs into what he did as president and the cover up with what was going on in the CIA. There was a report that was put out in 1975 by the Congress, and they investigated and basically dove into what the CIA had been doing. As far as I know, there's been no reports since then of what they have done, and a lot of stuff came out that nobody talks about. I'm digging through so much stuff. It's unbelievable how much stuff I've been going through over the last few weeks. And of course, on March 9th, the hopefully we'll put the rest, um, the finality of what happened to John F. Kennedy, and of course what happened to his brother, and what happened to Martin Luther King. I believe from other, more expert people. I'm not an expert. I'm doing this basically layman, and I've not read this report. I'm going to go through this with you, and hopefully we'll come to some kind of conclusion at the end of this. But the belief is that, according to more scholarly experts than myself, like Roger Stone, believes that it was Lyndon Baines Johnson who had killed JFK, RFK, and MLK, based on the fact that initially, because John Kennedy and his White House and the FBI was investigating Johnson and his dealings in Texas, they were going to get him off the ticket, that he wasn't going to be vice president, and not only that, but that he was going to be indicted for all kinds of crimes that included the Dallas Mafia. And the belief is that Johnson hired a hitman that had worked with him before in the 40s named Malcolm Wallace, along with the Chicago Mafia, and they took out the hit on John Kennedy. Now, I believe, uh, you know, um, when the Congresswoman last week said she thinks there were two shooters, I believe there were three shooters. Obviously, the one in the window in the Texas Book School Depository, witnesses said that it was somebody that was figured to be and identified as Mac Wallace, not Lee Harvey Oswald. There's a partial print in the sniper's nest that was that of Mac Wallace, who was a murderer, convicted murderer, because um, he killed a political opponent of Lyndon Johnson back in the 40s, and he served time in jail, in prison. Also believed that there was a shooter in the grassy knoll. Uh, the belief also from Roger Stone and others that this was an individual that was from Italy, brought in by the Chicago mob, and he was brought in that morning, and then he was sent off that day. So who this person is, I don't know, and I believe there was a third person that was a shooter, who I believe was CIA and was stationed underneath the bridge. There were multiple witnesses that saw at least two areas of shootings, one in the window in the building and one in the grassy knoll. And again, my opinion is that uh, there was a third shooter, which made it basically a shooting gallery. But we're going to find out. We're going to find. That's the one thing, when government gets involved in stuff, they have to put out memos. They have to sort of allocate money to where, and resources to where these individuals are going, and they have to check in. So all this information is always out there. Now, we have talked about in this channel other former presidents that were involved in Dallas, one being George H.W. Bush, that he was in Dallas that very day. He was also supposedly the uh, mastermind of the Bay of Pigs disaster. The Bay of Pigs was called Operation Zapata, which was the same name as his oil company. And the belief is that he organized some of the people that were there in Dallas on the famous Zapruder film. The famous Zapruder film, we've seen individuals that work for the CIA. So CIA was all over Dealey Plaza that day, and probably watching what was going on, watching the witnesses, watching civilians. There was an audio tape that came out a few weeks ago from two individuals that worked for LBJ, basically confirming that it was LBJ who put the hit out and the specific person that did it, which was Mac Wallace. And that's important to remember because it's the first time we've ever heard anything. One of which was a man named Billy Saul Estes, and another man was a man that worked for the DNC, was the chairman of the DNC, who right after that in 1971 mysteriously died. Mysteriously died. So there's a lot of stuff to go through. One rabbit hole after the other. Now this thing with Gerald Ford, like I said, he tampered with evidence in the Warren Commission. He changed where the bullet that hit the president in the upper torso. The thought was that, and he placed it through the neck, but it was really through the shoulder, the right shoulder. And that placement's important because it tells you that it was impossible for that bullet to go through his neck to hit Governor Connolly, who was sitting in front of him. That means there was another shooter, another shot was taken somewhere else that hit the governor. Also, the night before the motorcade and the parade, Johnson went to Kennedy and said, look, you can't have Governor Connolly in the motorcade with you. And Kennedy's like, look, we're down here for political reasons. He's got to be in there. He's got to be in the limo with us. Sorry. So that's big reason why Connolly was shot. It's because he wasn't supposed to be there. But we're going to go through this. And what this is about is really information about the CIA and what they've been doing. This was in 1975. Now, this article is from the nsaarchive.gwu.edu. Briefing Book Intelligence. This is from 2016. And there are some really rough characters in this article. And this goes through all the information. There's so much stuff to go through. Hope it won't take me too long. If I have to do a second live stream for this, I'll do a second live stream this for you. Because I'm very fascinated with this stuff, quite frankly. Now, please, in the meanwhile, like this video and subscribe. And let me know what you think. I'll have more stuff coming up. Because as we get close to the information coming out, we'll be on the forefront. And I'll know more stuff, too. Gerald Ford White House altered Rockefeller Commission report in 1975, removed section on CIA assassination plots. And I bring that up because obviously, if the CIA was involved with the assassination of President Kennedy, then it makes all the sense in the world. Makes all the sense in the world that to keep it covered up, the fact that they were involved with multiple assassinations in this country. They shouldn't be doing anything like this. I'm tired of these people, to be honest with you. White House aide Dick Cheney. What a wonderful individual he was. His name's all over this too. Well, hopefully we'll get that son of a bitch. We'll get that guy too at some point. White House aide Dick Cheney spearheaded editing of report to dampen impact. New documents cast further doubt on Commission's investigation and independence. Washington, D.C., February 29, 2016. The Gerald Ford White House significantly altered the final report of the supposedly independent 1975 Rockefeller Commission investigating CIA domestic activities over the objections of senior Commission staff. According to internal White House and Commission documents posted today by the National Security Archive at the George Washington University. The changes included removal of an entire 86-page section on CIA assassination plots. Now, we'll dig into this as well in the future, and numerous edits to the report by then Deputy White House Chief of Staff and future piece of shit, and really was still current piece of shit, Richard Cheney. Today's posting includes the entire suppressed section on assassination attempts, Cheney's handwritten marginal notes, staff memos warning of the fall of the lead in the controversial section, and White House strategies for presenting the edited report to the public. The documents show that the leadership of the presidentially appointed commission deliberately curtailed the investigation and ceded its independence to White House political operatives. This evidence has been lying ignored in government vaults for decades. Much of the work of securing release of the records was done by the John F. Kennedy Assassination Records Board in the 1990s, and the documents were located at the National Archives and Records Administration at College Park, Maryland, or at the Gerald R. Ford Library in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Additional mandatory declassification review requests filed by archive fellow John Prados return identical versions of documents indicating the CIA is not willing to permit the public to see any more of the assassination stories than we show here. The documents in this set have yet to be incorporated into standard accounts of the events of this period. Among the highlights of today's posting, White House officials of the Ford administration attempted to keep a presidential review panel, the Rockefeller Commission, from investigating reports of CIA planning for assassinations abroad. Ford administration officials suppressed the Rockefeller Commission's actual report on CIA assassination plots. Richard Cheney, then the deputy assistant to the president, edited the report of the Rockefeller Commission from inside the Ford White House, stripping the report of its independent character. The Rockefeller Commission remained silent on this manipulation. Rockefeller Commission lawyers and public relations officials warned of the damage that would be done to the credibility of the entire investigation by avoiding the subject of assassinations. President Ford passed investigative materials concerning assassinations along to the Church Committee of the United States Senate in an attempt but failed to suppress the Church Committee's report as well. So Ford had done a lot of damage to this country. He also, I would mention, was a FBI informant during the Warren Commission. Anyone that had any doubts on that Lee Harvey Oswald was not the lone gunman, he went back to the FBI and told J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI what was going on. So he was like a double, triple agent, but he was really an agent of the globalists. The White House markup of the Rockefeller Commission report used the secrecy of the CIA budget as an example of excess and recommended Congress consider making agency spending public to some degree. Boy, oh boy, this is just, I mean, the more you dig into this stuff, folks, it just makes your hair stand up. I mean, really, it really does. It's really quite disgusting, to be honest with you. To see this stuff happening, and then you see the government, particularly the executive branch, completely out of control and what's going on. Hopefully we'll have some accountability now. The Rockefeller Commission, the White House, and CIA assassination plots by John Prados and Arturo Jimenez Bacardi. Current controversy over drone attacks is an important backstory. During the 1970s, it became known that the CIA had plotted the murder of foreign individuals. These persons, for the most part, were prominent leaders or even heads of state. That the U.S. government had in any way been engaged in murder became a dark charge against the CIA and helped inflame the political climate in a way that ensured investigations of the U.S. intelligence agency would occur. During those 1975 investigations, particularly those of the Rockefeller Commission and the Church Committee, allegations of CIA involvement in assassinations were among the most important lines of inquiry. President Gerald R. Ford himself had a key role in triggering the investigations, inadvertently but artlessly revealing the fact of a CIA involvement in plotting assassinations during a meeting with the press editors. What a dope. What a dope. I mean, the truth always comes out. What a dope. There had already been revelations of, and he did tamper with the material of the Warren Commission. There had already been revelations of the illegal domestic activities by the CIA. These led to the creation of a presidential panel under Vice President Nelson A. Rockefeller and committees of inquiry in both houses of the U.S. Congress. Ford's January 1975 admission of CIA involvement posed a dilemma for the administration. Rockefeller attempted to head off inclusion of the subject, restricting consideration of assassinations to the question of what role Cuba might have had in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Well, they didn't have any involvement. The country of Cuba didn't, but those involved with the Bay of Pigs did. So you might have had a bunch of Cubans down there too. You had George Bush running around. When he was alive, he did not say why he was there. And according to the silver douchebag Barbara Bush, she said he was in Haiti, but he said he was in Dallas that day at the Sheraton Hotel. But he cannot account for what he was doing there. That's a big problem. And of course, he became the head of the CIA. And the one thing that was mentioned when President Trump put out the information years ago, he said that people were still alive. President Bush, the first, did not pass away until the end of 2018. As I continue, that proved unacceptable to some members of his own commission, among them then Governor of California Ronald Reagan. The Rockefeller Commission took a vote on whether to include charges of CIA assassination plots in its inquiry. The group overrode its own chairman. Rockefeller's key opponent in the fight over investigating assassinations was the panel's staff director, David W. Bellin, a lawyer for the Warren Commission. Holy shit. Why is he on here? And panel to look into the Kennedy assassination in 63 and 64. Bellin had been handpicked by Ford, there you go, for the Rockefeller Group. Ford, one of the Warren commissioners, was confident in Bellin's loyalty, but this time the lawyer fought hard to investigate deeply. It was probably because his credibility was on the line. The investigators sought CIA documents on assassination plots conducted in its history and information on administrative routines. They also questioned key witnesses. A CIA lawyer, John S. Warner, admitted under questioning the agency certainly had no specific authorization to conduct assassinations. Warren additionally admitted he was not clear that a president had the constitutional authority to order an assassination, that it might lie within his powers. What about a vice president killing his president? Now, I would mention this is important to remember. There are only two members of the elected body that has the capability of directing the executive branch. Okay? And that's the president and the vice president, because they are legally obligated to do whatever is necessary for that branch to be run. So if Johnson had told people behind the scenes that Kennedy was a threat, they might have taken him seriously because he was their boss as well, and he was duly elected. Although there's some shakiness about that election 60, he was duly elected, and people would take him seriously, not knowing that he was being investigated on the other hand by Kennedy on the side. Documents in his electronically briefing book reveal the views of the assassination reports of not only Bellin but key members of the staff. At the time, in the spring of 75, the Senate Select Committee to Study Governmental Operations with Respect to Intelligence Activities, the Church Committee, was just being constituted, but the Rockefeller Commission inquiry was already in progress. Days after Church Committee members met with President Ford, Press advisor David Gerald, another real lowlife, advised the president say nothing about assassinations. Another one. Very shaky guys. I mean, real scumbag, this guy too. The jurisdictional and procedural issues regarding whether to include an investigation of assassination plotting, so far as the Rockefeller inquiry was concerned, were fought out over the same period. White House officials, including panel chairman Rockefeller, continued the rearguard action in opposition. First, to cover CIA assassination plots at all, and later including the material in the Rockefeller Commission report. Bellin continued to press for the coverage, took a primary role in interviews the Commission conducted for this part of the inquiry. and became the main author of the portion of the report dealing with CIA plotting against Fidel Castro. The Rockefeller Commission collected a wide array of evidence, as illustrated by a staff member's report, what could be learned from the papers of former CIA Director John McCone and a CIA compendium document on the CR rifle project. As of mid-April 1975, Bellin expected to have the assassination portion of the panel report complete by the end of the month. He so informed White House officials, however. The CIA dragged its feet on providing materials, and Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, another bad guy, he passed away, he just died recently, who initially promised cooperation, provided little. It does something. I thought I dropped my glass in the toilet. I always think of Kissinger in that episode of The Simpsons, where they can't find his glasses and he admits to himself that he dropped them in the toilet. That's who he reminds. That's what I remember here. And he's another guy was a bad guy, a really bad guy, and he's really the puppet, another puppet master. Kissinger is allowed to stay in that White House, but his boss is gone, Richard Nixon. There's so many bad actors in with the Republican Party that undermine Richard Nixon. I'll do something on Richard Nixon when they find anything. He's got no connection to the assassination, but he does in some ways because he starts digging into it and he finds himself in big trouble. I wouldn't say this. I know one thing about Nixon. President Trump would not have taken the pardon, and he would not have resigned. He would have fought that to the very end. He said, "I have nothing to do with this," and he would have taken it to the edge. They would have had to prove everything, but they pressured Nixon to resign. He never should have resigned. He should have taken that to the bank, especially if he knew that he was innocent. And he always made it seem that he was innocent, and he was. And also at the same time, he never should have accepted that pardon. Said, "Look, I resigned because it was better for the American people. I'm not accepting that pardon because I did nothing wrong." He should never have taken that pardon. When you take a pardon, that's basically an admission of guilt. And once President Nixon did that, he was admitting that he did something wrong. President Nixon didn't do anything wrong. And we'll get into that at some point. When Bellin scheduled a press conference to announce the panel's assassination findings, Deputy Assistant to the President, Richard Cheney, and White House counsel, Philip Buchan, citing Kissinger's concerns, intervened to induce Bellin to cancel it. Wow. Some bad people here. As the Rockefeller Commission moved toward finalizing its report, panel staff concluded that the assassination issues were going to be buried. Several recorded their objections to this course. The Rockefeller Commission Public Affairs Director, for one, observed that leaving out assassinations would make the report seem like a cover-up and cast doubt on the Commission's entire project. Nevertheless, Bellin and staff could not prevent determined superiors from holding back the entire subsidiary report that dealt with assassinations. Meanwhile, at the White House, Cheney led the way in editing the Rockefeller report, including suppressing the assassination section. The final draft of the full report contained a brief passage noting that President Ford had asked the panel to investigate the assassination plots after its inquiry began, that the staff had not been able to complete the investigation, and that Ford had then asked that assassination material be turned over to him. This guy is unbelievable. The Cheney edit inserted doubts by adding that it was unclear whether assassinations fell within the scope of the Commission's mandate, thus resurrecting jurisdictional issues which had previously been resolved. The revised language also reduced President Ford to a bit player, asserting only that he concurred in the panel's decision to investigate rather than he had revealed the existence of CIA plotting, and then being obliged to modify the Commission's terms of reference to include an investigation of the matter. White House editors also changed the original text from indicating that records were still in the process of being turned over to the President to the statement that it already has been done. Document 19 reviews the substance of the Commission's evidence and findings relating to assassinations. And Document 20, White House lawyer Buchan discusses the substance of the findings. The White House edit, Document 15, provides clear indications of the direction of the White House's concerns vis-a-vis the conclusions of the wider Rockefeller Commission investigation. The report had determined the various intelligence agency actions were illegal and explicitly called them unlawful. The editor resisted that formulation and talked instead about actions that merely exceeded the agency's statutory authority. The Cheney supervised edit made a single exception. The White House changed commission language which found the CIA had exceeded its authority in the course of drug experiments to say that these had been illegal. Rockefeller investigators had probed White House CIA relationships that landed the agency in trouble during Watergate as a result of White House instructions to provide psychological profiles of prominent individuals disguises for White House operatives and documents on past CIA activities. The full commission had then approved a recommendation which specified that a single authoritative channel be established for all White House requests to the CIA and that this be routed to the NSC staff. Following CIA internal directives, one that had, among other things, resulted in the compilation of the family jewels. The Rockefeller Commission made clear that any CIA employee who questioned the propriety of any White House order should take that concern either to the CIA director or the agency's inspector general. The White House editors changed this directive and renumbered Recommendation 26 to publish report. Now, employees were to be instructed only to question requests that came outside the authorized channel and state their concerns only to the CIA director. Improper requests came off the table, and the Inspector General was not to have automatic jurisdiction. Wow. But they really controlled the flow of information here. If you didn't go through the proper channels, you were going to be ignored. If you were afraid to deal with the president, any president, you're trying to get information about the CIA, you'd have to go through certain channels. That means that information goes directly to him or his people below him. Among the abuses that led directly to President Ford creating the Rockefeller Commission with charges, the CIA compiled dossiers on American citizens and infiltrated political groups and opposed the U.S. war in Vietnam, which is true. That's how it turned out. That was true. In this instance, the Rockefeller panels entered a blanket finding that the files and list of dissenters was improper. It was more than that, probably a crime. The White House edit changed this conclusion, indicating that the standards applied had resulted in materials not needed for legitimate intelligence and security purposes. Yeah, but they could say that, but then be still watching people. And this merely applied to many records gathered about the anti-war movement. White House editors eliminated a commission recommendation that applicants for agency positions and foreign nationals acting on behalf of the CIA can be informed more clearly that they could be subject to the U.S. security investigations. The Cheney-inspired edit also added recommendations the Rockefeller panel had not voted. One, advocated for a new civilian agency committee to be formed to resolve concerns about the use of CIA-developed intelligence collections mechanisms for domestic purposes. Another White House-originated point sought to increase public confidence in the integrity of the intelligence agencies by instructing them to review the holdings of secret documents periodically with the aim of declassifying the maximum amount of material. This recommendation was more honored than the breach. In a related case, White House editors eliminated lengthy commentary from one of the commissioners, the former Solicitor General of the United States, Erwin N. Griswold. A detailed footnote quoted Griswold as saying that an underlying cause of the problems confronting the CIA was its pervasive atmosphere of secrecy, and recommended Congress consider making public the CIA budget. Boy, isn't that funny? They're talking about the budget. That should be the question, too. We want to see what's in that budget. That would be interesting to see what money's going where. What are we going to do? Because we got the CIA director in there. You got Trump going in there with Doge, with Elon Musk, and find out what's going on in that budget, where that money's being spent. That'd be scary to look at. I don't even know that Musk could be able to reveal a lot of that stuff. The commission quoted Griswold in the context of a recommendation of the President's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board. White House editors converted Griswold's statement into part of the main text, which the entire Rockefeller panel had supposedly agreed upon, and uses to buttress a recommendation to create a joint committee of the Congress to oversee the CIA and other intelligence agencies, and went on to recommendation 4. The Congress considered making the CIA budget to some degree public. It should all be public. Thus, the White House edit both put words into the Rockefeller Commission's mouths and dispensed with concerns they had expressed. A Apart from the substantive issues raised thereby, these actions amount to direct political interference with a presidential advisory panel. Ford may have been comfortable with his subordinates' maneuvers, but they helped drain credibility from the Commission's investigation, as the panel's own staff had warned in discussions of whether to include its assassinations report. The White House strategy for releasing the Rockefeller report is detailed in talking points and strategy memorandum. In the end, in a complete reversal of the actual inquiry, the only assassination material to make it into the report concerned whether the CIA had conspired to assassinate President John F. Kennedy. Richard Cheney and Gerald Ford failed in their effort to suppress the assassinations portion of the Commission's work. Rather, the media, alerted to the issue by the president himself, kept pressuring until Ford declared he would turn over the assassinations material to the Church Committee. He's such a dope. The president essentially kicked the controversy down the road. The Commission's files and interview records related to assassinations gave churches investigators a blueprint and a boost in their own inquiry. Senator Church's committee moved quickly and completed its investigation report in October of 1975. Along the way, investigators compiled more than 8,000 pages of depositions or testimony, covering 75 witnesses over 60 days of hearings, most held in executive session. Committee staff analyst Locke Johnson, who later authored the Collect, a classic account of the year of intelligence, found many revelations almost unbelievable. In some cases, requiring a suspension of disbelief, few serious novels would ask of their readers. Wow. So they're coming across such information. They couldn't believe the information they were coming across. Well, this is crazy. So they were like shocked by the stuff they were coming across. I mean, if this doesn't tell you that the real bad people running this government, and this is 50 years ago that this came out. This is 50 years ago. 50 years ago. With the committee at the point of asking them that the full Senate release its report on October 31st, President Ford wrote Senator Church to ask that the report be kept secret, well, of course, on national security grounds. Several days later, the committee voted to reject Ford's demand, and Church answered his letter on November 4th, writing, "In my view, the national interest is better served by letting the American people know the true and complete story." And they only had a portion of it. "We believe that foreign peoples will, upon sober reflection, admire our nation more for keeping faith with our democratic ideals than they will condemn us for the misconduct itself." In a display of legislative strategy, on November 20th, the Senate convened in a secret session to debate releasing the Church assassinations report, but failed to delay or prevent it from being made public. So the president, I would think, was pressing the Senate to not put this out, because the committee had approved the report while the full Senate took no vote on whether to enforce a rule that would have held up release. So they were in negotiations, and they put up a vote whether to do, and they couldn't come up with anything. They were deadlocked. Boy, oh boy. The truth always comes out, though. The sordid story of CIA assassination plots came into the open most authoritatively in the Church report. These revelations did not destroy the Republic, contrary to White House and intelligence community's warnings. The committee recommended that a prohibition on assassination be written into the law, in supplying language that could be used in such a statute. That prohibition would have covered not only foreign officials, but members of an insurgent force, an unrecognizable government, or a political party. Interesting. The White House took a different tact. A steering group of officials working on the political crisis of the year of intelligence proposed that President Ford, issue an executive order to govern intelligence agencies and operations, and that the order include a prohibition on assassinations. Senator Church objected that anything a president set by fiat could be charged by fiat as well, by means of a future executive order. Besides, the Ford executive order, issued in February 1976, lacked the definition that would have been supplied by the Church Committee recommended statute. President Jimmy Carter issued his own executive orders on intelligence in a preliminary form in May of 1977. and a reworked version in January 1978. The assassination prohibition would be widened somewhat by removing the word political, which the Ford executive order had issued as a qualifier, and by extending the ban beyond government employees to anyone working for or on behalf of the United States. The Carter ban would be repeated verbatim in President Ronald Reagan's executive order issued on December 4th, 1981. Every subsequent president has continued the ban, and the Reagan EO itself remains in force. Wow. So this is so much. I mean, this is just craziness. That they were so desperate, folks, to keep this information out of the public sphere. It makes you think that they were hiding something. So they go through this report, going through what was going on at the CIA, because they were hearing all these rumors, and that they were trying to make sure that really was just a way to prevent people from this information about the CIA being involved with the Kennedy assassination. Because all this stuff started popping up. I believe it started popping up with this this reporter, this sort of gossip columnist called Dorothy Kilgallen. And she was somebody that was on TV. She was basically the Liz Smith. She was like the page 6 of her time. But she knew everybody. She knew everybody in Hollywood. She knew the politicians. And she was getting information from Hollywood. In 1964, I don't know that much about her, but I know that people were going to her and telling her, I was like, look, President Kennedy was killed through a conspiracy. And she was starting to dig through this stuff. And then one day she died. And nobody knows if the word was that she killed herself by drinking too much. Now, I have to dig into her at some point and find out a lot about her. I don't know much about her. But that's where it started. She dies mysteriously. They say she alcohol poisoning or whatever. But that's kind of where it started with her. And people were starting to question what the hell is going on here with this whole thing with Kennedy. And then you started hearing stories about witnesses that were there just dying mysteriously. People dying in car accidents. People died in shootings that had seen some stuff. Now, according to this audio tape by the head of the DNC and by an associate, and they were both good friends of LBJ and worked for LBJ, they said by 1971 there were at least 17 people that had been murdered. Kash Patel, the new FBI director, had said on a podcast with Glenn Beck, I'm going to paraphrase what he said. He said that, look, the problem isn't the assassination, okay? The problem is when you are in the intelligence agencies, you have to follow up on things, okay? So I'm assuming the problem is that they started digging into this stuff and it started going to one place, possibly to LBJ. And that's what the cover-up is always the crime, is always after the crime. It's never the crime a lot of times. It's always after the crime. That's what the cover-up is. And they had to cover their tracks because they were killing people and they were covering their tracks. You can't have a government that is going around killing its citizens because the citizens witnessed a crime committed by the government and people of the government. You can't have that. And I think that's what happened. And I think that's what Kash Patel was mentioning. Now, today, Pam Bondi, the new Attorney General of the United States, the Justice Department, she was on Fox today, and she told people, the interviewers today, that not only the Epstein files are on her desk, but also the JFK materials on her desk as well. And they're reviewing it. It's going through the process of being reviewed by the intelligence agencies and by the Justice Department. She's probably reading it to make sure that no information is going to get out where people are going to go to jail. My feeling, if this was a crime that was committed, there's no doubt. They said it was always Oswald that did the crime. So if Oswald did the crime, then you don't have to worry about other people getting arrested. unless he didn't commit the crime. I don't believe he had anything to do with the shooting. He was there, but I don't think Oswald had anything to do with that murder. Because witnesses said he didn't seem at all flustered when he was leaving that building that day. And like I said, there were witnesses that had seen Mac Wallace in that window. And there were witnesses that saw a shooter in the grassy knoll, which I believe is probably the Italian guy. It was probably the Italian man the man that came from Italy that was brought over. But I would expect by March 9th, and that's the day, that's 45 days, the information on John F. Kennedy is going to come out. The information on Robert Kennedy is going to come out. The information on Martin Luther King. Now, what does this have to do, this video, have to do with Kennedy? Well, it's simple. If you cover up the plots that the CIA was involved with in terms of the assassination, then you have a situation where possibly Kennedy's name is brought up or his brother's name is brought up. According to Robert Kennedy Jr., he has said that Sirhan did not kill his father, that his father was shot in the back of the head at point blank range. Sirhan is facing him. He's not behind him. That's an obvious thing. Excuse me. So you have a situation with that. That seems to be a pretty clear-cut case if, according to Robert Kennedy, if there was an assassin, and the belief is this assassin was a man that was brought in from the Philippines. Okay? That this man was brought in from the Philippines, and because of that situation with the Philippines, he was brought in that day, and he was left that night, from the hotel. Martin Luther King, I don't know nearly as much about. I know the biggest detail about Martin Luther King is that James Earl Ray was a guy that was a homeless man, and for some weird reason, the guy had no money, had nothing. But he was able to get out of the country, being in Georgia, went from Georgia to Canada to London. How did he wind up in two different countries? And that's when they got caught. That's how he got caught, was in London. So, you have a situation where to me, it's a lot of this stuff seems very suspicious to me. I always felt that the King assassination was very suspicious to me for obvious reasons. And the obvious reason basically is, how does Ray get from Georgia to London, from Georgia to Canada to London, if he did it by himself, when he has no money, he has no way of getting around? This happens for a very simple reason. He had help. I believe that the CIA was involved, possibly the FBI, and the Klan. Okay? Which is basically the Democrat Party. Now, according to guys like Roger Stone, he said that Johnson was also involved in that because King was going to endorse Robert Kennedy. And once that happened, he decided to get rid of him. And then once Robert Kennedy decided and was asked at a rally, was he going to investigate what happened to his brother, he said yes. That's when he got killed. All this goes back to Kennedy and the assassination and the cover-up. And now you have all these bad actors that are running around the Republican Party, unbelievably, that were participating in the cover-up, that were there in Dallas, that were part of the Warren Commission. You got George Bush there in Dallas. You got Gerald Ford was on the commission. Gerald Ford goes on to be president, unelected. Richard Nixon was there the day before. I think I'll do something on Nixon while he was there. There's so much information on these people that are in the public view. But Nixon, digging into it, this is according to Tucker Carlson, digging into it, 4 members of the CIA burglars were in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963. So there's a lot of stuff going on here that needs to be put. We have the pieces, the puzzles being put together. There may be 4 or 5 pieces, and then you get a clear picture of who gave the order, and I believe that obviously the globalists wanted to do away with Kennedy as well. The globalists, the mafia. It didn't seem like Cuba so much, and it wasn't the Soviet Union. A couple other things I learned, and this is from 5 years ago with Kennedy. 5 years ago with President Trump putting out the information. So just so you know, I try to get as much information. One, the Soviets did their own investigation because they wanted to make sure that no rogue member of their government was involved, that any rogue members of the KGB was involved. They were involved. They did an investigation. They said the most likely person was Lyndon Johnson. Mrs. Kennedy. And I've been watching this movie off and on. It's very difficult to watch it. It's called Jackie. It stars Natalie Portman as Mrs. Kennedy. It is very difficult to watch it because it's the hours after, the moments after the murder, the hours after the murder, the days after the murder, and it's very difficult to watch. Her going through the house, going through the White House, basically changing the clothes, taking all these bloody clothes off of her. But she had an investigation of her own. She asked the French government. She was very close with the French. I believe she was French. Her background was French. And she asked them, it's like, look, can you investigate it? They investigated as well. And as it turned out, they also said it was Lyndon Johnson. Also from 5 years ago when President Trump put out the information. For 50-something years, the tax records of Lee Harvey Oswald were classified. Why are they classified? Well, we found out 5 years ago that there was a 1099 that led him to basically be proven that he had worked for the FBI. So he was an FBI asset. And obviously the FBI was watching him, not knowing that he was working for the FBI, and that, of course, he was in the CIA. I would think that he had a handler. The belief is that he had a handler in the CIA that was close friends with, believe it or not, George Bush. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, and hopefully we can get all the pieces together, and we'll find out exactly what happened. But maybe I'm wrong. But there's so much so much stuff going on here that it needs to be looked at. So hopefully you like this live stream. We'll have more in the future. I'll actually have other videos, and of course, it's gonna be a lot of stuff. There's so much stuff here, and to me, it's very exciting because I've been wanting to know about this my whole life. Wanting to know who had killed this president, and obviously, we've had some really bad presidents over the last 30 years, and a lot of them were indirectly involved, directly involved with Kennedy. And I'm saying this very simple fact. I will go through it. Obviously, George W. Bush. Mrs. Clinton's father was a lawyer for the Chicago mob. There was also a major crime syndicate in Arkansas. Believe it or not, Barack Obama is good friends with the Bush family, directly to George H.W. Bush. George H.W. Bush was very good friends with Barack Obama's stepfather. They were both oil men. So there are all these weird connections that go back to these families and to these people. And all this stuff needs to be revealed, and hopefully we'll have it revealed. So thank you for watching this live stream. We'll have more in the future. There'll probably be some stuff on Monday, and hopefully on Wednesday I'll get videos out for you if I can. I'll be very busy tomorrow. I won't be able to do a whole hell of a lot for tomorrow. But thank you for watching the Patriot Hut. We're gonna uncover the truth behind Kennedy and who killed him once and for all in less than a month. We got 8 days, 9 days. So we got 17 days until, well, actually less than that. 16 days until we find out who killed that man. And it was a murder, and there's no statutory limit on a murder. And once this all comes out, then we can move on. What President Trump said, it's a cleansing. Now, he said it's really bad what's in that report, by the way, but we'll find out, and we'll find out together. So, and I will go through as much information as I can for you. as we continue on this march to find out what happened. And then we got other stuff to talk about. We got the Epstein files, we got the 9/11 stuff, and of course, something called UFOs. So, thanks for watching. Have a good day. Please subscribe to the Patriot Hut, and I'll see you later.